Every now and then, you come across a ship in Star Citizen that captures the heart of many players. Something with personality, functionality, and a bit of versatility thrown into the mix. So it's no wonder many of you have been asking for a review on the Drake Corsair, the definitely not a pirate ship that makes a big impact. So, how does the Corsair perform in-game? I'm Forrester, and in this video we'll explore the answer to that question by reviewing the currently flyable Drake Corsair, which is described on the Star Citizen website as an exploration ship. If you've seen other reviews on this channel, then you probably know what to expect, with this video following the usual format. It's split into 5 sections, starting with a ship tour, assessing combat performance, reviewing handling and visibility, looking at the operating costs before finally summarising. As always, I've included timestamps in the video description in case you want to skip ahead. And if you're one of the many people watching who isn't yet subscribed to the channel, you might consider it so you can be notified of future Star Citizen videos as they go live. And we'll start the tour for the Corsair by approaching from the starboard side. Near the front section, just below the turret, is an elevator call button which brings down an elevator to bring you up near the cockpit. However, for the purposes of this tour, we'll go in through the rear entry ramp. On each side of the ship there's a button by the ramp which allows you to deploy it. This takes you up into the rear cargo bay. There's plenty of room in this cargo bay for up to 72 SCU of cargo storage, or equally small vehicles. On either side of the bay is component access for some of the components aboard. And there's also a circular mechanical gizmo which controls the wing mechanism. Moving forward up through the ship, we enter the engineering section. There's some more component access, as well as a couple of engineer stations. On the right or starboard side is an airlock section with an airlock docking port. Each of these doors has their own handle, which is kinda neat. Moving forward through the ship, we enter into the habitation area. Here you'll see the mess table as well as a food preparation area. This is also where you'll find the Drake style bathroom with shower and toilet all in one place, as well as some small habitation rooms. In here you'd find a basic bed, as well as somewhere to store your things. There are 3 of these rooms, all in a neat row. Also in this section is the elevator access, which takes you down out of the ship as we showed you earlier, or potentially up to the roof. The roof access is interesting, but doesn't offer a great deal. Moving forward through the ship, we enter into the bridge section. Here you'll see the 2 manned turrets, as well as the captain's special bedroom. There's usually a cockpit chair for the co-pilot, in this case it's occupied, and then the pilot's chair at the front. The Corsair comes relatively well armed for a ship that's definitely not intended for piracy. The pilot controls 4 size 5 mounts on the nose, equipped by default with gimbaled size 4 laser cannons. The pilot can further operate 2 size 4 mounts on the wings, equipped by default with gimbaled size 3 laser cannons. That's a pretty meaty forward-facing punch, able to dish out a lot of damage to targets in front. The weapon placement is a little unusual, with convergence between the nose and wings taking a little getting used to, but mostly works fine. That armament is further augmented by 4 missile racks on the wings, defaulting to 8 size 3 missiles, but the racks can be swapped out for anything between 4 size 4 or 32 size 1 missiles. And the firepower doesn't stop there. The co-pilot seat in the cockpit can control a remote turret at the top of the ship, armed with dual size 2 weapons, and there are a further 2 manned turrets, one on each side of the front of the ship, also equipped with dual size 2 weapons each. The co-pilot turret has reasonable coverage for any targets above the Corsair, however the manned turrets are a little more limited, partially obstructed by the wings to the rear. They're also often hard to use owing to the nature of how pilots naturally fly the ship, keeping the nose facing targets. Still, having more armament isn't the worst thing. Defensively, the Corsair is protected by a single size 3 shield, which is the standard for ships of this size, and does a reasonably good job of keeping the ship safe. Overall, that makes the Corsair a fairly strong fighting ship, even for a solo pilot. More nimble targets in a PvP environment may be able to do a better job of sitting in the blind spot behind the ship, but against AI targets, the Corsair can come out on top against even some quite beefy opponents. The cockpit is sited right at the front of the ship, which often makes things easier for the pilot. Visibility is generally good, although there are a couple of cockpit struts in the vision line, not to mention a little spinning fan on the dashboard that often draws your eye. And the Corsair flies fairly well for a ship of its size. It doesn't feel as responsive as flying a fighter, you'll know that you're at the helm of a fairly big ship, but equally the throttle and brakes are reasonably quick to respond to inputs, and turning the nose isn't too much of a chore. The top speed of 950 meters per second is amongst the average for ships of this kind of size, and separately to the landing gear, the pilot can also control the deployment of the wings from stowed to active position. Altogether, that makes the Corsair quite a nice ship to fly, especially if you don't feel the need to fly to the limits. The stock quantum drive is the Torrent, which gives the Corsair impressive range, but isn't the quickest at getting around Stanton. As a larger ship, the Corsair does have some running costs attached. At times when you need to rearm, refuel and repair, you can expect those costs to be in the thousands of credits. That's not unusual for a ship of this size. Moreover, the Corsair has a few options for making that cash back. First off, there is the cargo storage aboard. At 72 SCU, it's not a lot, but does mean that trading is a possibility. Moreover, it makes piracy a possibility, able to take and store a reasonable amount of cargo of questionable provenance. Naturally, law-abiding players could also use the cargo bay for other things like running box delivery contracts, although there may be better choices out there for such missions. Equally, the Corsair would do just fine as a support ship for other activities, such as rock mining or as somewhere to place salvage materials. The combat performance means all manner of combat contracts against AI targets are feasible and potentially quite profitable with the Corsair too, so plenty of options for earning those credits back. In terms of loadout changes, personally I'd recommend changing out the quantum drive to an XL1 for quicker traverse through Stanton, and perhaps swapping the shield generator to an FR86. Otherwise, I'd leave the rest as is. The gimbal weapons make things a bit easier for the pilot, and the all-laser loadout reduces the need to head back to port. Visually, the Corsair has its own unique style to it, which is probably down to the beholder to decide if they like it, but it's not a stretch to see this ship as a bit of a hero ship in a popular IP, with its asymmetric design and wing folding mechanics. Inside the cockpit, the dials, switches, fan, and even the little loose display on the floor all feed into the rough and ready Drake design language. No frills, but gets the job done. And it does get the job done. The Corsair is a versatile ship in that it lets you do a bit of everything. The very first ship review on this channel called the Constellation Andromeda a jack of all trades, and that's true of the Corsair too. For any given task, there may be a better ship out there, but what the Corsair lets you do is complete a plethora of different tasks, all from a single platform, and that versatility is part of the key strength of the ship. That's especially true with the inclusion of a ramp at the rear, enabling the cargo bay to be used to store small vehicles or snub fighters. The Corsair is also in the sweet spot of being soloable effectively, but also having a few different roles for a small crew. But naturally, there are some drawbacks. Whilst the manned turrets on the nose look cool, they feel less practical in a combat setting. In fact, all of the turrets aboard feel like they're lacking a little bit in the firepower department. There's a warning message about shields overheating that often pops up, seemingly unnecessarily. The elevator to the roof is cool, but often makes you think there should be something up there, which there isn't. And the 72 SCU of cargo storage isn't a lot compared to some of the dedicated haulers. You could pay 25% more for the Hercules for almost 10 times more cargo capacity. But that's not really the point of the cargo bay on the Corsair. It's about giving you options, somewhere to store those illicit goods whilst you make your way around the verse exploring. And that all brings us to price. At around $250 or 3.4 million Alpha UEC, the Corsair is similarly priced to the Constellation Andromeda, and the in-game price for that seems fair, as the ships are quite comparable. The Connie leans a bit more into cargo, the Corsair leans a little bit more into combat, but the idea of both as a jack of all trades, master of none is similar. And that's the important value consideration here. If you want a ship that is the best at a specific task, you probably wouldn't pick the Corsair. You'd find one of the dedicated haulers or something more dedicated to combat, but you also may end up paying a little more for doing so. If you want a single platform that lets you do a variety of different things, that's where the Corsair really shines, and it really does shine. But do you agree? I look forward to reading your thoughts in the video comments. As always, if you're not yet subscribed, you might consider it if you got this far to give YouTube the nudge to suggest similar videos in the future. And it would also be really helpful to me if you would press that like or dislike button to guide me as to what videos you're enjoying the most, so I can focus on making the most relevant videos in the future. Otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.